Was the forbidden tree created by God? Maybe this is not your question. Your question is, where did sin come from? How could a perfect angel fall in a perfect heaven and a perfect man fall in a perfect Eden? We answer, man and angel fell because they were perfect. They were created intelligent. And one essential mark of intelligence is the free will. The free will and individuality are so essential to being intelligent that to cancel them, whether by creative power or by fiat, is to detract from the true potential of the angelic or human soul. The gift of the free will is so sacred that it costed the Creator his life. Rather than conveniently and simply delete the gift of choice, God chose to retain it at an infinite cost to himself. So, we own that God created the tree of knowledge no less than he created the free will. The tree was not poisonous, but was a test of loyalty. And after he created the tree of knowledge, he did not say to man, "Thou cannot eat of it," but he said, "Thou shalt not eat of it." He did not fence nor take away the ability to eat of it. This could have been easier, but it could surely have interfered with our being human. It could have made a robot of us. God did not only create the ability to choose, but he also created the opportunity to choose. The tree of knowledge was one such opportunity, fraught with eternal outcomes. The history of this planet and the universe is centered on this tree in the middle of the garden. God loves it better when we do good while it is possible to do evil. Even in his innocence, man was given opportunity to choose good. And that was the tree in the middle of the garden. If good lacked merit, choice would not have been given in the matter. It is evil, deception, and error that thrive in force and concealment. If God feared that his character would not bear the strain and test of investigation, then he would not have allowed the great controversy between good and evil. He would not have created the human and angelic free will. The very fact that the great controversy exists is evidence that God has nothing to hide. The fact that you have reason enough to probe your Maker's intentions and motives is evidence enough that God is the first to exemplify the principle, "He that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest." That is John 3:21. God himself, who is the light, does not fear the light of the closest scrutiny. Far from concealing his character and actions from us, he desires to be known. Jesus said, "And this is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent." That is John chapter 17, verse 3. The more you know him, the more you love him and be drawn to him. It bears repeating that it would have been more convenient for God to make us robots who would think nothing and choose nothing. That was the less risky option. For God to arbitrarily stamp his sovereignty and infinite power upon every pulse of the will and thus choke every breath of reason was all within his choice. But this was not the design of his benevolence and self-sacrificing love. Suggest all you may that in the light of God's sovereignty and power, there shouldn't be any disloyalty or rebellion for any length of time. But God utterly refuses to take your advice. Every man, says the Bible, must be fully persuaded in his own mind. That is Romans 14, verse 5. That's why he will allow you to live, though you thus challenge his wisdom. That very sentiment, which casts reflections on the wisdom of God, makes you to deserve the fate you wish for those you think to be most sinful and rebellious. But God's long-suffering allows both fallen man and apostate angels to live on. That fallen man may have a chance to make decisions for life or for death. He has made everything beautiful in his time. There is a time to live and make choices, and there is a time to be judged for the choices made. Choice itself would not be possible if life were not allowed anyone who disagrees, or if life were trammeled by the sternest penalties for every transgression. In judgment, he remembers mercy. While it is true that God judges for sin even in this life, his judgments are such as to help us make right choices, not to destroy the power of choice. Let the human and angelic will run its course, and destinies will be decided by personal choice, not by fiat. A time is coming when judgment will be executed and the universe will be clean again from all sin and suffering. It will be because the truth more than force will have won. Finally, the tree in the middle of the garden was a tree of knowledge of good and evil. Man by creation only knew good. Evil and suffering was unknown to our race by creation. For God saw everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. That is Genesis chapter 1 verse 31. But good was not to be imposed, but chosen. So there was a tree of knowledge of something extra. It's called evil. By obedience and faith, man would have known only good and remained blissfully ignorant of evil. But by disobedience and distrust, he would pry into forbidden ground and thus learn by experience what sin and its consequences meant. We have ourselves entirely to thank for the sin and suffering in the world. The universe of God is forever going to choose good from the experience of the malignity that evil is. Man now knows both good and evil and complains and cries out to be delivered from the evil. The heart is weaned from every curious desire to know evil. We already know enough of it. God's omniscience has overruled evil to do good. And we know that all things work together for good. That is Romans 8:28. Thine own wickedness shall correct thee. Thy backslidings shall reprove thee. Know therefore and see that it is an evil thing and bitter that thou hast forsaken the Lord thy God, and that my fear is not in thee, saith the Lord of hosts. That is Jeremiah 2:19. We've been sufficiently corrected by our transgression. What do ye imagine against the Lord? He will make an utter end. Affliction shall not rise up the second time. That is Nahum chapter 1 verse 9. Judgment will be done, and evil and evildoers will be expelled from existence forever.